Welcome to the Yes You May podcast. I'm your host, Amanda May Gray, where we talk all things confidence so that you can live your best life that is the most fulfilling without regrets. Today, I have a lovely friend of mine named Miss Kricket Harrison. I'm going to bring her right in. She is a keynote speaker with Smart Success, her brand. Miss Kricket, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on. How are you today?
Awesome. I'm good. A little chilly here, but it's all good. Thanks for having me.
You are so welcome. It is okay to have the chills. I feel like it's actually nice to have the variations in weather because I lived in Florida for 8 years. Yeah, 8 years. And like now that I have the weather again, I'm like, oh, it's kind of nice. You appreciate the warmth more. And it's nice to wear
I
sweaters
always
every now and
appreciate
again.
warmth more. Doesn't matter. I'm a warm beach girl.
Did you grow up in the beachy area? Or you just
No, but I grew up traveling to a lot of beaches because my mother was from Ireland and was cold all the time, and she loved the warmth of the beach and the coast in the U.S.
that makes sense. I didn't know she was born in Ireland?
Yep.
Wow. So you're a true Irish lass.
I am what you call first generation. Although everybody looks at me and they can't imagine that because we have made up in our heads what that has to look like. But yeah.
Well, right, yeah.
Yeah. So
That's
while everybody else did fun things, I did Irish American Society growing up.
I didn't do that, but clearly with my hair and the red, there's Irish in our bloodline, which I confirmed from ancestry.com, although we are also Scottish, so that I know is like sometimes some tension there.
No, you're just Celtic. We'll just blend it all together. We'll just have different plaid skirts on at some point, I suppose.
I like
Although
that.
the Irish don't really do that. I do see some people do that, but not as often.
We both appreciate whiskey and beer though, and that's really the most important. That's for sure.
Well, while
So
my dog is named after a beer, I unfortunately can't drink beer. So yes, I appreciate it from afar, and I love the Guinness tour. So I'll
I
always be a
haven't done
fan of what I
that's on my
can't
list.
have.
You can't? That's unfortunate. Is it the gluten?
Mm-mm. There's something they think it's brewer's yeast. It's not really gluten, but there's something in there that I'm allergic to. And if I have a beer, I will feel like I have the flu for about 4 days.
Ooh, so not even like a short term. That's like
It's several days. Yeah, yeah. And it
how
was
long does
not
that
fun
take
to
you
figure it out.
I was gonna say, how do you even figure that out?
Just tracking things when you have a reaction and then talking to an allergist who says, "Oh, this is actually pretty common."
Oh, that's a
So
common thing. Interesting.
It's apparently when yeah, that's a whole different discussion. But yeah, so apparently, if you have an allergy to beer, it can be to like the brewer's yeast and not necessarily gluten that triggers some kind of like I feel like I have the flu. That's the only way I can explain it. So yeah.
Interesting.
So anyway, going back to Ireland where we started, um,
Fascinating.
yeah, the whiskey I can do. The beer I just watch everybody else enjoying it, and I wish. But I do love me a good Irish coffee,
I mean, who doesn't love a good
right?
Irish coffee?
Right.
That's fantastic. You could technically have a baby Guinness shot because that doesn't have any actual beer in it, despite the name.
Probably.
So there you go. I can't have dairy. Let me tell you how depressing it is to not be able to have dairy in your life. Yeah, whew. So I get it.
I'm
I
on
get
that
it.
train too. So, but I can get
Yeah.
away with some things, but not much. It's hardest
Yeah.
when I travel.
Oh, for sure. Or go to any restaurant and yeah, they don't tell
Yeah.
you or they don't know. We were at we're totally veering off topic, but we were at a, diner just on Saturday this weekend, and I told the kid, "I can't have dairy," so my husband's like, "Yeah, can she still get some eggs? Do you cook the eggs in butter, or do you just use oil on the griddle?" And the kid had no idea. Like, he just completely didn't understand. So he went and talked to his manager. The manager said, "Yeah, that she'll be okay." Comes back, so I just ordered 2 eggs and a side of bacon. And he's like, "That's it? You don't want any pancakes or any French toast?" And I was like, "No, I can't have dairy." And both of those things 100% have dairy in them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But people just don't
Yeah.
understand it. It's unfortunate, but hopefully our hopefully our whole society will be a little better on the food vein now that we've got some more emphasis on it in the government. So I'm not against that.
You can hope because as
But I
much as I don't do a lot of dairy, I do back to Ireland, love me some good Kerrygold butter, man. That's just the best. So
it's
yeah.
so good. It's so
Isn't
good.
it good? It's okay. Anyway.
And their cheeses. Anyways, yes. We're just gonna
So
make
Amanda
everybody
and I will be
hungry.
starting a new podcast on travel in Ireland and all the food you can and cannot eat. Stay tuned.
And then we'll go to Italy. And then
Oh yeah.
yeah, I haven't been to Italy, you gotta go there too. Ireland's
Yep.
on my list though, for sure. I mean, you gotta, right? Like, you have
It's
to go at some
awesome.
point. Anyways, so you're here in the States now. Actually, you've always been because 'cause you're first generation.
I've always been. Yep.
You're a keynote speaker. Tell me a little bit about how you got into speaking.
Oh, well, it's so funny that you asked me that today because I just actually wrote a little blurb about this.
Oh,
I grew up wanting to do this. I had to look up the names. It's been so long. David Hartman on Good Morning America back in the day. I think Good Morning America started in 1977. So
okay.
you don't have to tell me you weren't born yet. I know that. But I remember sitting and watching the show, and I wanted to be the news anchor, but not the
Mm,
news anchor like reporting on fires. I wanted to be like the talk show host.
yeah,
And in fifth grade, I got to anchor the little fifth grade news in Miss Cooper's class,
that's
and I
cool.
was hooked. So, all the way through school, I studied speech communication, participated in speaking contests, things like that. Got to college, started out as a broadcast major, and
Okay.
quickly learned that maybe the broadcast field wasn't directly where I needed to be.
Mm,
And, you know, it's funny because I think we go after things in life or we go in a direction maybe subconsciously of what we want to do. So while I didn't end up as a broadcast major, my path through life landed me back to speaking on stages. So a little different version of what I thought I'd be doing at 10
yeah.
years old. But I used speaking to grow my business when I went out on my own. And the more speaking I did, the more people asked me to speak, or the more people asked me about how I got started speaking. And it just grew from there. And so, what started out in the early 2000s is hey, this is an easy way for me to grow my business. It's where I'm most comfortable. I have the most fun. Became, wow, this can be a whole nother part of my business, and eventually became the main part of my business.
That's awesome. That's it's funny because I always have been a performer or an entertainer or, like, in some form of communications as well, but I never realized I could stand on a stage and that could be the job, right? Like, I think very, very few people grow up like, "I'm gonna be a speaker." Like, I don't think that's really is well known until you become an adult and figure, "Oh, wait, people make money doing this."
Right,
And it's
right.
something
And
most
it's
people don't wanna
funny you
do.
say that because my son grew up like you and always wanted to act, and he actually lives in LA. And for me, I never wanted to act.
That's interesting,
Like
yeah.
I knew I wanted to be on the whether it was the journalism side or the talk show type side or the
Yeah,
presentation side, but not as an actor. So it is funny how you have this drive, and I think when you're that young, that drive is so pure that it does end up being kind of where I look at my head. I'm using my head because I'm not using my hands. How you circle around to when you're an adult, right? When you have the choice to go after what you want, you end up making decisions again, maybe subconsciously towards, this is what I love, this is what I want to do, and this is where I'm at my best. And I think that's what makes us happy in life and allows us to not get burnout in our work and all those things people are talking about now.
yeah, yeah. I think that's something that, isn't it's not always obvious either. That's one
No.
thing that I bring up a lot is, like, I didn't see going through all the different random things that I enjoyed doing and, I was in sales for a while and I've been in marketing, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. You don't see how it's all gonna eventually tie together and lead to something else. And in the middle of it, you're just overwhelmed or frustrated and you don't understand why you're not where you wanna be yet, or you're comparing yourself to somebody who's already where you wanna be, whether they're younger or older, it doesn't matter. You're like, I should just be there." But I think it's really important to understand that everything that you do is gonna lead to what you wanna do and is preparing you
Yeah.
to be able to do it. Because if you didn't have those experiences for you personally, you probably wouldn't be as good at what you're doing now or as happy doing it. Because I was trying to be an actress and I figured out pretty darn quickly that that world and that environment, which we're also finding out more and more is quite sketchy, was not for me, you know? But that was always my dream. I always wanted to be the Lucille Ball, but it just never, I didn't.
Oh, I love that. I can see you doing that. Well, and to your point, you need the sales and the marketing training to be able to run your own business regardless of
Yes,
what business you're in. I mean, it's speaking, we are the business, we're marketing ourselves, but no matter where you end up. So yeah, all those things you learned have helped you on the path you're on now.
absolutely. Absolutely. What gave let's talk about your confidence because that is, of course, what is the primary talk on my show, even though I go all over the place, which I think is why some people enjoy it.
Hey, I'll follow you wherever. We're good.
I've come up with a new phrase. I'm like, maybe this is more of the unfiltered confidence show where we go all over the place and I don't edit out something ridiculous because it's more entertaining. Tell me about your
Absolutely.
confidence journey and how you found the confidence to be able to stand on the stage and speak, which is terrifying for what is it like 98% of people are terrified?
That's what they say. And, I'd be lying if I said I don't get those flutters
Yes.
every time I get up there.
Yes. Yes. And the okay, all right.
Yeah, yeah, but they give me energy. They give me like I have
Mm,
to transfer that into using my energy on stage. It's funny because I don't remember being that confident. And whether I think
yeah.
all kids start out confident, when we start out, everything is perfect, right? We don't always get the experiences that support that.
Mhm.
And I can't say it's anyone's fault, but when you grow up with a name like Cricket, kids can be really rough. And I got called cockroach. I got called all
Oh,
sorts of things. Men, as I got older, asked me, could I rub my legs together? So the self worth and the self value was a struggle.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
and then it was one of those things that there's just something inherent in nature, whether it's our what is the word I'm looking for? It's kind of like survival of the fittest, if you will, that if
Yeah.
somebody is in a mood or has something and just is in a mood where something happened to them, so they're going to be, maybe they're not always a bully, but they're going to be a bully for today. I was the target because
Yeah.
I was the small little one. I was very small growing up, and I was always the shortest one in my class. And I had these big eyes, and people would just say I was either standoffish or I was too shy and quiet or reserved, and they really didn't know that I was just trying to figure it all out and not be made fun of.
Yeah.
So, maybe as a kid I was supposed to be confident and stand out. I don't know. And I learned to retreat, which is what I think happens a lot of times. We learn to retreat to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
And I would say that carried, that little girl is still in there someplace. I can't say she's gone. She every now and then says, "Hey, wait a minute, what about me? Are we really doing this? Are we sure we can do this?" I think what I've learned as I've gotten older is to trust in myself more. I've learned how I think and work best. I've learned what's best for me. I've put myself in environments that I know are good for me. So instead of trying to prove that I'm something that I'm not, instead of trying to do something that doesn't fit me, then, you know, those things take away from you. If you're doing things that are doing things that support you and build you, then slowly over time, you build that confidence muscle. Now,
Yes.
if you asked me to go out and play golf today, I would not be so confident, even though I've been playing a few years, right? You
Right.
have to
Yes,
build that
exactly.
muscle.
Yep.
It is not just an
Yeah.
overnight process. Um, but I will never forget the day someone said to me that I went from being shy or not confident to I was standoffish, snobby, and arrogant. And that was because I was off to the side of a group, standing there watching. Hair was a little different then. So I don't remember what it was, but maybe you could see my eyes more. I don't know. But I remember somebody saying, "You're just like those big eyes," or whatever. And I remember thinking, has it ever occurred to you that I was shy or
Mm,
insecure or unsure of myself and afraid? I didn't know where I fit in.
yeah.
And I remember the person looking at me that I finally said that to, and they're like, they kind of took a step back and they were like, "No, not at all. It never did." So that helped me too, because I learned I'm not responsible for what they think. And I
Yes.
don't have to step into what they think, right? Because that's where that self worth piece comes from. And when I was younger, I would then sit there and say, "Oh, well, I don't look right. My eyes are too big, or I'm standoffish, or they're like staring people down." I don't know what it was, right? I was just being a kid. I was
Yeah.
in my teenage and college years, right? When I learned to let them be responsible for their own thoughts and feelings too, it stopped taking away from my confidence.
Mm,
So, again, it's a process. I can't say I'm 100% on anything, but I've learned that it doesn't define me. Like if I mess something
yeah.
up, it's okay. And I think that's courage and confidence, right? It doesn't define me anymore. I used to let it define me. I used to let other people define me. And I think when we give our confidence and our self-worth away to someone else, it never goes the way we want it to go. That was a
Yeah.
long answer, wasn't it?
No, it was a great answer. I think you had a lot of important things to say in there. I really like the idea that it's a muscle. It's not just something you instantly have, it's something that you work on and you grow, and it's always so validating, right, when you hear somebody else be like, "I wasn't confident," or "I wasn't what people projected on me." I've had that a lot. People have projected things on me my whole life, and it's like, "But that's not who I am. How are you gonna judge me so quickly?" I mean, that's my whole first impression talk, is it started because people would always look at me and make a snap judgment, and I wasn't who I felt like I was. And so I had to learn how to overcome that and just project who I want the world to see, and if they see it, great, and if they don't, they don't. But to be confident in what I'm projecting and happy with myself first, because I think a lot of the times it's not being happy with yourself that breeds that judgment from others or that snap decision or, you know, pushing narratives on us that aren't true about ourselves. So I think it's
Yeah,
fascinating
I
that
think
you
it's
can be
kind of
open.
a chicken and egg issue, right? You don't know
Ooh,
which really came first.
that's so true.
Because are we not happy because every time we try something, someone's telling us we're wrong? Are we what do we start to believe? I'll never forget this. When you watch kids go through this, you can see where it starts. And I'll never forget my daughter coming home, who was, probably average height, maybe a little taller for her age, skinny as a beanpole, right?
Mhm.
Just very straight up and down build. And she was probably about 8 or 10 years old. And she was upset because somebody said something to her. And it was, I knew it wasn't about her. And she says, "Mommy, so and so called me fat." And it was all I could do not to laugh, but I didn't
Right.
want to dismiss her. But I could see, right, what kids do and what it was doing to her. And I said, "Well, are you?" And she kind of went, "What?" And I said, "Well, are you fat?" And she looked at herself and she went, "No." And I said, "So what does that tell you?" And this, I'm not kidding. My 8 to 10-year-old daughter goes, that she's mad about something and she's making stuff up. And
Wow.
I was like, absolutely. You have to learn what's true for you and what's not.
Yeah.
And it's just funny, both on the side of what we do to other people that we don't realize we do. I don't think people often do it to hurt the way they hurt. They do it because they are hurt.
Yes.
And
Yep.
then
Hurt
and
people hurt
then
people.
right. And so sometimes then if we keep hearing it, we step into that role.
Yes,
And
and we're
then
it's like when you talk about a red car and then all of a sudden you see the red car, it's the same concept,
mhm,
right? Once you
right,
start
right,
believing it's gonna be, it starts to be more and more and more, and you're expecting it, so then it happens more, or you're
right.
more aware of it, whereas if you weren't expecting it, maybe it happened, but maybe you didn't even realize it, you know? So, I think that's a
Well,
lot
lucky for
of
us, it works the positive way too, because when you
Oh,
can flip
absolutely.
that and start saying that's about them, not me, and you control your own story. Like I said, every time I go on stage, I get the butterflies, and I think they're good. I think they show that you care, that you want to do a good job. But then I have to turn it into it's not about me, right?
Yep.
And I'll never forget going on stage one time with a Hall of Fame speaker. You're telling yourself, "Gosh, don't mess this up," right? When you're up there with somebody big. And I had just gotten some bad news, and I
Yeah.
remember going, "You got to hold it together, right?" And there's all these stories about imposter syndrome, and you got to put your hands on your hips and you plant your feet in the ground and you ground you. Well, for me, I have a lot of energy, and that doesn't work. that shuts me down. That energy that was building up then, which was somewhat stress energy. So I had no place to
Yeah.
go. So I'm back there bouncing. I'm literally bouncing on my heels. And I had to sit there and tell myself, you've got this. You worked for this. You've earned this. You've earned the right to be on that stage. Right. So I had to build that confidence back up because the stress of the news I got was just pulling my heartstrings right down.
Yeah.
And so you have to find ways to tap into it when you're not so sure it's there, right? I'll never forget, I was at a meeting and someone said to me, "Oh, you know something." And I said, "Well, I don't know if I'm right." She goes, "Well, you sounded so confident." And I said,
Yes.
"Well, there's a difference in confidently sharing your ideas and arrogantly thinking they're always right,
Ooh.
right? I can confidently share something and
Yes.
be okay with being wrong. That's confidence in who I am and my voice. That doesn't mean I have all the answers. That means I'm confident that I can contribute or be part of the discussion.
I
And I
love that.
think there's a separation there as well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And being willing to see somebody else's side. I think that's where, there's a lot of issues with if you're not willing to learn or grow or see somebody else's viewpoint, then you're dead
Right.
in the water, right?
Right.
Yeah. But I
And
agree that you
yeah.
have to find ways to, you know, build yourself back up. Remind yourself that you are qualified, should be there, are doing it.
Mhm.
I have something similar, so I talk about this, when you're nervous or you have to walk into something, I think it's like a lot of nervous energy, and it's been said, and I am not the scientist that said it or found it, but I believe it's true, that nervousness and excitement are actually the same chemically in our body. So our body doesn't know the difference, it's our brain that's telling us, "I'm
Right.
nervous," or "I'm excited." So when you know that, you can say, "Okay, I'm just excited. This is gonna be fun. I'm gonna enjoy this. It's gonna be great." Uh, but what I do is I literally shake my hands up, and I think I might
Yep.
have gotten this from acting, maybe, I don't know, but I literally shake my hands, like, get them up over my head, get them over my heart, like, and I call it the smile and shake, and then, like, take a big smile and just
And
and, like,
hope no one sees you behind stage, right?
I mean, hopefully, but at the same time, I pretty much
Yeah.
just project who I am, and they're like, "Alright, well, that's just
Yeah.
Amanda, she's extra," so
Well,
and they
no, that's
let
what
me
I'm
know.
saying. I'm bouncing behind stage. You
Yeah,
know, you have to do. So it's interesting. I was listening to a man named Dr. Greg Wells, and I can't quote his title, neurophysicist, neuro something,
neuro
um,
smart guy.
neuro smart guy. And he was talking to us, a group of speakers, and his comment was that if you get that, and you're right, it's we attach emotion to physiological experiences, right? So
Mhm.
it's how we perceive it. His comment was, for people that get like that, one way to combat it is if you do like a hard cardio workout beforehand, that you and I can't remember exactly how he explained it, so I don't really want to misquote him, but I love the idea was that if you exercise well in the morning, like I'll do yoga. I usually don't do things that cause me a lot of stress before I speak. Maybe I should, but that it,
Yeah.
whether it burns through the endorphins, whether it does something to the cortisol depletion to where you're not going to get that stress rush when you speak.
'Cause you're getting the energy
But
out.
to your comment earlier, it's a matter is it an excitement stress rush? Is it a negative stress rush? What's the meaning you assign to it? I like my energy. I like your energy. I think energy is important on stage. So I'm kind of all for keeping it. You
Maybe
know,
don't
I
do a
don't
whole
want to
marathon.
shut it down. Yeah.
I think it depends on how soon afterwards, because, like, if I did an intense workout and then an hour or 2 later was supposed to be on stage, I know that wouldn't work, but if I was speaking in the
Right.
afternoon, right, then I might want to go get a good workout in the morning and get some of that nerves and that anticipation, because just sitting around waiting to do something can build you up and pent you up too much. So I think
Yep.
it's kinda like everybody knows dogs, well, not everybody, maybe I shouldn't say everybody, but people know that their dogs need to be exercised, right? And a puppy
Right.
that is just kept in a cage is gonna be a nightmare, and we all know, "Oh, I gotta burn off his energy." Like, it's well known we need to do that with dogs and puppies, and yet we don't think
That's
about ourselves as the same, but we
right.
are.
I know.
We need to walk, we need to
And
give everybody, "Come on."
it's funny because I'm listening to you and I'm thinking to myself, yeah, but guys can do that because it doesn't take them nearly as long to get ready.
Well, then
And
there's
let's
that.
face it, that's part of our confidence, right? Is how we show up, how we present, what we do. So, yeah, I'm always factoring in, what do I need to do to get ready? And, if I'm going to, first of all, I don't run unless I'm being chased. But if I was to go ride the bike or do something, I'm thinking, how long do I get ready? What do I need to do? Did I bring a hair? So there's these little things that I think as women we go through, even appearance wise, when we show up that, yeah, so maybe that exercise could help us. And if we don't feel as good, if we feel like we're rushed getting ready, if we feel like we don't have the same look on stage than we want, then you have to balance that out.
Yes.
um, I'm a little envious sometimes of people that can just, get in the shower and get ready and be ready to go in 15 to 30 minutes because that
Yeah.
isn't my world,
Yep, nope, me either. Me either.
right?
I
Um,
planned my hair wash day around the gym day, like,
right.
I
I
didn't
feel like
say
I'm
one
back in
day.
the 50s when the girls would say, I'm staying home to do my hair.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Yeah. I never thought that was a real thing, but now I get it. I get it more when I travel because when you travel, but again, where I'm going with this is it's part of our confidence,
Yes, it is.
right?
Mhm. It is, because and it's not as much about how I mean, there is absolutely a portion of how other people see us, 100%. Visuals are, for the vast majority of us, the first thing we notice about anybody, whether you like it
Right.
or not. Like, that is a fact. We don't necessarily hear first, because we might, but we see first. As long as
Right.
you can see, that is absolutely the first thing you notice, whether that's in person, whether that's somebody's website. Like, the visuals do matter. And,
Right.
where was I going with this? I don't even remember. Oh, but it also matters. I know, I'm terrible. How
Oh,
you
you're good.
perceive yourself. And that's one of the
Right.
big things in my work that I like to talk about is, like, you need to dress to empower yourself so that when you look in the mirror, you're like, "Yes, I feel good." Because when you feel like you look good, then you project that, and that energy is so much different than when you're, like, unhappy with the way you come across. So whatever that means to you, if that does mean a full face of makeup, if that means freshly done hair, everything, like, whatever that means for you, that it matters more how you perceive yourself than how the others do, because you're
Yeah,
putting off that
absolutely.
energy, and
Yeah,
that's huge. Looks matter, man. Visuals
they
matter.
do. That's why I love my fun clothes. Every
Yes,
time
me too.
although I will say that's become pressure. I used to go to events and they would be cold. And so I have all these different wraps that go with different outfits. And a
Yes.
friend of mine said to me one day, I always love going to these events. I can't wait to see what you're bringing in next. And like it became this thing. And I'm like, why did you make it a thing? Because it used to just be fun. And now it's like there's pressure. I got to perform with my clothes.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And
Oh, for sure.
somebody said to me like a week ago, "Well, you saw me in that pink jacket." And then somebody said to me, "I always know you're going to show up with sparkle." And I'm like, well, not really, only occasionally,
Yeah.
right? It's not an everyday thing. But there is something now about when you build out your brand and how you look that people then start to expect it of you.
Yes,
And
100%.
so that confidence ladder adjusts, right? It's like we can have it so good. And then all of a sudden, when it's become expected, it's like the bar gets raised, and am I there again yet? And you start questioning it again, right?
That's why it's important to have things planned out in advance and curate your wardrobe and curate what you have so that at a moment's notice, you can have your go-to things that you've pre-planned in advance that's like, "Okay, at the drop of a hat, if I had to speak today and I needed to run and go, I know what outfit I would grab and go with and be confident in." But a lot of people don't think about it in advance, and I mean, same meeting you and I were both at, I had somebody say complimented what I was wearing, and the person next to them is a good friend of mine. She's like, "Yeah, she's always dressed well." And she said it so nonchalantly, but at the same time, it was like, to me, I was like, "Oh shit, yeah, I gotta keep that up." Like, there's this. I was doing it
It's
for
part
me.
of your
This is
brand
what
now.
right, but now I have
Yeah.
this standard that people expect me to show up whatever that is, like professionally, but stylish. Like they expect a
Yep.
higher level because, and to be fair, I think a lot of that for me, although I've always loved dressing well, I think it exemplified post COVID because I wasn't,
Well,
right? I wasn't wearing
yeah.
any of the things. So like I don't even to this day, I'm not going out as much as I used to. So when I do go out, I'm like, ooh, what am I gonna wear? And so I think
Right.
it's set this higher standard that I'm like, "Oh, crap. That wasn't what I meant to
Well, I
do."
think too, when you're in the world we're in and you are on stage, I have what I call stage clothes, stage
Yes,
outfits. They are
100%.
not things that I would probably wear. And
Yep,
then I have some that are like breakout or
yep.
smaller event, what I call my newscaster clothes, like that you look like the Calvin Klein dresses or whatever. But they're appropriate and fit for the level that we're at. But it is a thing. If you think about some of the people in our industry in the speaking world, that is part of what sets you out apart. And it's also
100%.
honestly part of what makes you visible up on the stage, right? It's
Yeah, you don't wanna blend
you're
into the
up there
stage.
for a message. So you need to be seen. You need to stand out. And that's part of it.
Well, and you need to represent authentically, right? Like, if I went up in
Right.
scrubs, that wouldn't make any sense. People would be like, "What are you doing?"
No, not
Right?
unless
Like,
your message was about medicine.
it right, exactly. It's gotta be congruent to what you're saying, which is actually you were at the, Les Brown thing. Yeah,
Yep.
that's where I
Yep.
just saw you. "Hello, Amanda." Yeah, that was the only thing I did this month. Ugh. Um, when he was asking that lady and she had a title that was incongruent with where she came from, and that was the whole point. It wasn't
Oh
that it
yeah, the
meant
Louisiana thing. I remember that,
yeah,
right.
gumbo, yeah, and it made so much sense to me because we're gonna look at you and be like, "Well, that doesn't make sense." That'd be like me trying to represent that I am from the South. I am not from the South. I am from Boston. I am not as nice or sugar coated. I tell it how it is a little more than I probably should. And yes, it gets me in trouble, but
Well,
that's
it's interesting. It's interesting that you bring that up because I'm thinking in terms of kind of what I went through as a speaker, developing my
yeah,
message and growing. And this goes back to where the confidence was, right? Is my my company is Smart Success. My speaking platform is on First Class Leadership.
yep.
And that developed because it's who I am from my past. I'm not trying to be somebody I wasn't. It's how I grew up. It's I grew up in the airline industry, and I've been involved with four different airlines growing up between my parents and myself, as well as several other in the outside sales and
Yeah.
tours and travel agencies when they existed back in the day. Um, that's part of what let me own my message.
Mm.
And again, that's a confidence piece, right? That
Yep.
imposter syndrome is not there because it's something I lived and I did, and I own the message and I own who I am in that place, so it makes me more confident in presenting my message and the material I'm presenting. And I think, what we're referring to is when people try to just latch onto something because the acronym sounds cool, or latch onto something just because they like the idea, but it doesn't really parlay into their life and who they are and about them, then it doesn't work,
Oh, no, not at all.
you know?
The people are seeing through unauthentic so much faster than it's we are gone is the time when you can just say whatever, and as long as it had polish, you were good. Like, I
Right.
think the world is fatigued of the filter. Ooh, that's a good saying.
That's good.
Fatigued of
But
the filter.
AI is going to change this too. I'm seeing so much fake.
Ugh,
I think there's a lot of AI tools that are fabulous and can help you, but
absolutely.
I'm seeing a lot of 100% fake being created. So authenticity, what I call just being real piece
Yeah.
is going to be harder. And I'm curious as we're talking what that's going to do for confidence. It's kind of,
Well, it's
they
already
say
taken a
fake it
hit.
till you make it. So I guess that's a way. I don't know.
I don't believe in fake it till you make it, at all. I think I thought because fake implies negativity and it brings you down, so then you're never inauthentic, so then you have imposter syndrome, so I think that's a terrible phrase in and of itself,
Good point.
but it's 100% already happening. And it's not necessarily just AI, it's the internet, it's social media, it's smartphones. You know,
Yeah.
my kids' generation, they're early 20s and teens, my stepkids, and it's completely different. The world that they're growing up in, their
100%.
ability to, communicate. I've talked about this a bunch, and it's literally one of the things I talk about on stage with generations because it is so prevalent to me that communication skills, being able to be fluent with our words, have a meaningful
Right.
conversation, have an argument, have a discussion, have a disagreement, and do it face to face and not through the smartphone is a dying art form. And
Um,
it's
I,
something
I,
that, oh my God, we have to insist, and we have to give grace to these younger generations coming up. And as much as people don't want to, they're in their own way, but you got to give them a little more grace because, with COVID, that just tore away the whole all of humanity from them, right? Like they just all of a sudden lost the world. And so it's just
yeah, I think of that, and I agree with it. And so
yeah,
we know this is going a totally different direction. We know that we have a huge mental health crisis
we do.
during that period. However,
It's
that period is over. And if I look back, and social media wasn't in the world when my grandmother lived through two world wars,
mm,
right? It,
ooh,
I'm
ooh,
telling you, I kind of think that was a little harder. I hate to tell you, but and so
because you were
it's we have
isolated
to
even
look
more.
at what makes people that I sometimes I think it's because quitting wasn't an option
Yes.
for them. It wasn't an option for me. It's not that I didn't struggle. It's not that we didn't have challenges, um, but we didn't have social media where it always looks like everybody else is doing better.
Mhm.
I used to joke when I would speak to moms and I'd say, everybody's got the shiny car on the outside, but you can't see the french fries and the throw up on the floor on the inside, right? You don't know the extent of what the dirt on the floor is, right?
Yes,
Because just because,
so true.
everybody puts out this glossy picture. And I think to your point, it's this, how do you, everything is based on someone else's opinion. It's hard for them
Yes.
to develop self.
Mhm.
And you're right. I always speak about the fact that we have to, as my generation looks at all the new stuff, we have to look at it as, we camped out on the phone. I know this is hard for y'all to understand, but there were no cell phones and there
Right.
was no call waiting. You got a busy signal.
Uh-huh.
There was
And
not
you
even
were
call
courted,
breakthrough yet.
and you were
You got a
courted.
busy signal, but we had party lines.
Yep.
You could dial into a number and you could camp out on that phone. And I mean, we'd be on the phone 2 or 3 hours. No one could call, no one could get through.
Mhm.
That's what I look at as our version of texting. The difference is we were actually talking and communicating, not in 5-second abbreviated word bites, because they're not even sound bites, right?
They're not even sound bites, so
We
you're
were still
missing a lot
having
of
to
that.
actually talk and connect with
Yes.
strangers. And so I think again, I try to adopt the texting because I have to adapt. The world is changing. I have to adjust. But at the same time, it's learning. It's helping the younger generation learn to speak. I was talking to someone who's probably now around 30ish, and he was joking, but he wasn't. He
Mm.
says, "No, I can't order the pizza or order the delivery online. It's not happening." I said, "Well, just pick up the phone. Maybe their site's down, maybe something. Just pick up the phone." He says, "No. If I have to order food by picking up the phone, I will never do it."
Oh,
And I'm like, I know you think that sounds funny, but it doesn't. Right.
no,
And
it's important.
in business, it certainly didn't make me as confident in him doing his services. Right. It, it's, you,
Ah,
it's, gosh, there's so much here because there's so much too about the confidence to have an uncomfortable conversation,
yes.
right?
Yes.
You can't just text everything.
No, because 'cause
And
you're
you know
losing
what?
so
People
much.
say, well, you can, if I text it, I can delete it. And I'm like, not if they screenshotted it first. And people are, as fast as you can type it, they can snap a picture of it. Right.
Faster.
Yeah. So
I mean,
yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
an interesting place to be. It's to watch, especially because my kids are that age. They're 25 to 30, and I try to sit there and be aware of the changes and
Yeah.
not act like I'm so dated and try to be open to what's happening and the changes and the possibilities while at the same time saying, "Hey, pick up the phone and call me." You know, if you
Yeah.
ever, sometimes they'll text me and I won't see it. And I'm like, if you really need me, pick up the phone. Like, and they're smart. It's not, but it's still, it's just not what they think of first
It's
because it's
interesting
not
how
how they grew up.
it's interesting too how, like, the fastest you gotta think, what's the fastest way to get in touch with me? So for me, a text is usually fastest, calling will be faster, but unfortunately, I get a lot of junk calls, so if you're not saved in my phone.
Right. Yep.
Mm.
I
And
agree.
I'm lucky because I have a Florida number, live in Georgia. So if a Florida number is calling me and it's not in my phone, I 100% know it's spam, 100%, because that's how they do it. They do it based off of your area code. And so, that's a benefit for me, but, like, if you send me an email, good luck. Like, I don't always see it. It can get lost. There's so many junk emails now too. I have probably 5 email accounts. So if it's urgent, don't email me because I'm definitely not gonna get that, right? Like, it's not gonna be the first thing I see. I don't even have my notifications on all my emails because it would just be
Oh, I
constant.
never have notifications. I have
Yeah.
zero notifications on anything.
But and I
My
think
email
that
doesn't
because,
come to me
like,
unless I go get it.
yeah, if I don't I feel like we're in a society that you gotta respond right away. People
Yep.
expect you to respond within a couple minutes, not even within
So
the
here's
hour,
my
like, they
question,
want it.
Amanda. If someone texts you, how do you respond?
Depends on what they ask,
Yeah.
you
So
know?
I'm with
I'm
you,
pretty
and the
quick.
more I get, my emails all come to one place. So I get my emails, and I'm pretty good about responding to emails. My voice message on my phone actually says,
To
uh,
email me?
to email if I don't respond due to the number of spam calls. That's what it says,
Yes.
right? Because in
Mm.
our industry, you have to be available. Oftentimes, bookings are made by who they can get in touch with first.
Yeah.
If someone texts me and it's not a yes no answer, I am most likely going to pick up the phone in response.
Ooh.
I know it just made me old, right?
No, but it's
Because
brilliant.
there's too many questions, there's too much
Yeah.
unknown, and you don't want to assume things. And there's a conversation that needs to happen. And especially in our industry, when they might text you about a gig and say, "Are you available?" But they really don't say that first. They say, "What's your fee?"
Right, yes.
and and that we always joke that's like getting a prescription before they know what you
Mhm.
want, right? We can't really do that yet. We have kind of roundabout, but I'm always going to pick up the phone to have the conversation, to learn more about, what's the challenge, what's the audience, what's the problem, what are we looking at, what's your goal for the event.
Right, what's the
And
goal?
while that can be done in text, it gets really long and really wordy and could be handled in a phone call in a matter of minutes and have everything done.
Yeah. I
So
I
I'm
even
okay with
prefer.
texting that's available, because texting, like, I can send a text and I know someone's on the West Coast. It's likely not going to wake them up. They've got their phone or it's turned off, but I don't forget. Or I can set a timer now, like you can automate those, which is fabulous.
Ooh,
I don't mind that, but I always want to pick up the phone and have especially in business, but even with my girlfriends, like, I want to hear their voice. I want to have the conversation and feel like we're, friends that used to live by me. I want to hear their voice so we can kind
yeah.
of reconnect that way.
Yeah. I even prefer video calls over voice calls. And I never think to FaceTime, like, it's not, but, like, business-wise, I would rather get you on a Zoom call with me than anything else because I know when you see me and I'm talking and it's visual, especially specifically because it's speaking, I know that when you see and you can feel my energy even through the video, they're gonna be like, "Oh, yeah, that just gives me
Right.
such higher credibility," because they're like, "Oh, well, she's like this just now, like, she's probably gonna be more on stage," or, I think that's where I shine, but I know that that's my strong suit. I know my strong
Right.
suit is being seen, whether that's video, with live streaming or in person. If I just cold email, it's just another person there, but if I can get somebody to see me in person, that's where I'm gonna win it. And so that's why it's so important too, though, once I do get that in-person opportunity to make sure I'm showing up and controlling what I can control, which is the visuals, making sure the audio, right? Like making sure I'm dressed appropriately, that I look like I'm ready and able to handle whatever it is we're talking about. And that's it all matters in giving other
All
people the
everything you just said goes into making you more confident.
yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep.
Yep. What you know what we haven't talked about was actually your leadership.
That's okay. There's another time.
And I realize we're a little bit past time and I don't want to keep you for longer than you have available. Um, so let's just end on if you could tell the audience what you think is like the biggest thing in life for you that has really helped you when you're down and you're feeling out, like you are not feeling confident, you're questioning your decisions or, whatever it is that you're doing. What do you find brings you back up and gives you that boost? Is it self-talk? Is it listening to a podcast? Like, what do you think is some of your best advice for when you're feeling less than confident?
So, for me, partially it's faith. But
Mm.
the other thing I think that, well, I shouldn't say but, and the other thing is having something I call your mountain of moments.
Ooh.
And that is a wall someplace that nobody else needs to see. And it's filled with sticky notes that maybe build up into a mountain because the more you get, the more there are, and they go up of all the things you have done. It
Yeah.
is so easy for us to forget our accomplishments and focus on what went wrong and what we didn't do, that we forget all the cool things we did do.
Mhm.
And the other piece that I've really had to work on, and I don't know if this is just a women's issue because you don't hear men talking about this as much, although I think they probably do, is really hearing people when they tell you you did something well, when they
Yeah.
tell you, when they tell you, they don't just go, oh, this thing, and we dismiss everything,
We
right?
dismiss.
Really
I
hearing
dismiss
them
all the time. Yeah.
so that we start to see people the way they see us. And again, we see this higher level of self. I can't see what's right here unless I'm in a camera, right? But you can see it all the time. And so it's those little pieces. It's my mountain of moments. And if we circle back way to the beginning, it's that standing and bouncing and going, girl, you got this. You did the work. You've earned the right. I've done the work. And for me, that's a big part. Like I can land on that because I have done the work. Sometimes it's based on the work I've done, gives me the confidence to try something I haven't done.
Yeah.
Because hey, I tried it and I didn't die. Not yet anyway.
I
So,
mean, yeah.
and then and it doesn't define me. It just makes me richer and deeper and more of a person. So, you know,
Every negative, perceived negative is an opportunity to learn. The problem is
right.
when you don't take the time to reflect and learn from it. And I think that's
Yeah.
where we as a society could do better at it's not just hot and cold. It's not just win and lose. Like where in your less than optimal results, what did you learn? What can you take from that? Because guarantee you've learned more when you don't succeed than when you do. Because like you said, like when you do succeed or somebody says something good about it, you're like, "Oh yeah, thanks. Oh, it was," and you dismiss. But when you fail and you reflect back on it, I think you're actually learning more and can adapt and grow. But I totally dismiss all the time.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that it also depends on who it's coming from and how I perceive them in their knowledge of that specific
Right.
thing. So like if somebody says I did a great job speaking, thanks. But if somebody says that I look up to that is a trained, really great speaker, that then I'm really gonna take that to heart more when they should be equal, you know? It shouldn't make it that much of a difference, but it often does in our head. So I guess just being cognizant of that is important too.
Yeah.
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 Well, Miss Cricket, I appreciate you being here with us today. Where can
This
all
has
the
been
people
fun.
find you if they wanna look you up, have you come out, have them talk to you? You're there
They can
already?
find me probably most easily on LinkedIn at Kricket Harrison. And
Okay.
we were joking earlier, it's Cricket with a K.
Cricket with
I think
K.
I'm the only one out there to this Cricket
Really?
with a K. That's a K in sign language. That I think to this date, I'm the only one out there with a K. There might be a new one now. I haven't checked, but Cricket with a K. It's LinkedIn, Cricket Harrison, or on Facebook. easiest ways to catch me. We've got some new information, videos, and website coming out. So that'll be up hopefully in a couple of weeks. Fingers crossed, right?
Mine are
That one
crossed.
maybe I'm not so confident on, but it's not about me and my ability. So,
So, you gotta also learn to let it go, right? Like,
right,
things that
right.
what's not in your control, let it go, and it's okay.
Yep.
As long as you're taking the action towards it, I think that's really all that matters.
Yep.
Well, Miss Cricket, thank you for showing up today. I appreciate you
Well,
coming
thank
on
you
and
for
sharing
having
your
me.
words of wisdom and this lovely conversation that we had. Please, I'll have it in the
Yes,
show
we went
notes.
everywhere. We
I'll
went to
link
Ireland. We went to
we did.
Italy. We did it all.
I mean, who doesn't wanna go to those places? I know I do.
Hey, that's a first class life right there.
That's a first class and that's what you talk about, first class leadership, which we never said until now.
We pulled it in.
Have first class leadership with Miss Kricket Harrison. Not Mrs. I'm sorry, I should say it appropriately, shouldn't I? I just
Doesn't
call
matter. It's
everybody
all good. I know who I am. It doesn't matter.
Well, I hope you have a beautiful day. Thank you for coming on. Thank you guys for listening. If this was valuable to you and you think it would be valuable to somebody else, please feel free to share it out. And of course, like this video or this podcast wherever you are viewing and or watching this. I guess viewing and watching is the same too. Listening, if you're listening, thank you for doing so. And subscribe so that you can get more of this fabulous content on the Yes You May podcast with me, your host, Amanda May Gray. Thank you so much and have a great day.